I'm super excited to announce that I finally finished the pill dispenser, the project that I've been working on for almost 9 months, and it's had countless revisions, is finally finished. So here it is. The eagle-eyed among you will notice that physically not a lot has changed since the last version. That's because I'm kind of double downing on this design. It works great. Like, I can stack up to 4 extensions. Any more than that and you end up having delay issues between the pill being dispensed and it hitting the sensor. Most of the stuff I modified was just like little geometry things that I've kind of had left over from like when I was like meshing the designs and stuff. You'll notice the biggest change is actually this giant crevice right here. It's where I've put the new electronics. We'll get to those later. We also have this little hole here to allow access for the servo wires. I've also shrink wrapped mine just to try to make it look nice and neat, but I ran out of white zip ties, so ignore those please. So yeah, it makes it look relatively nice and neat, so you can just have this sitting somewhere and it just dispenses pills whenever you need them. That's it for the physical changes. Now let's get into the electronics, because that's where a lot of the change happened. Before we talk about the new electronics, we need to talk about the old ones, because sometimes I just need to rant about how stupid I am. This is version 7. You'll notice that version 7 has a D1 Mini, a Raspberry Pi Pico, which then connects to the servos and the vibration sensor. Using 2 microcontrollers to do one thing is just the smoothest brain thing I think I've ever done. So why did I do it that way in the first place? Well, in my early testing, I figured out that when you run the servos at 40 Hz instead of the default 50 Hz, the servos can have a wider sweep. And I needed that extra travel in order for it to go further beyond its point and grab the pills that would sort of hang behind. It really helped to get the last pill in the container. So it was kind of a must-have, but I also wanted it to have wireless access. So the way I had this going was just a minefield. I had ESP Home running on the D1 Mini, which would connect to Home Assistant, which would then be programmed in Node Red, which would then turn on the pin when it was like time to dispense the pill, which would then tell the Pico to run a certain servo until the vibration sensor goes off. And that was just ridiculous now that I think about it. For some reason, I just really wanted it to be controlled with Home Assistant, even though it made completely no sense. Now that we understand how ridiculous this is, let's go over to the new version. And you'll notice it's a lot simpler. We're only using a D1 Mini, which is running MicroPython, and really all it's doing is it's logging into Wi-Fi. It's getting time from an NTP server and checking that time against a list of times to dispense pills. We'll go over all that later. And because I'm running MicroPython, I can set the servos to run at 40 Hz, so I can have the extra sweep. And yeah, this is the electronics I'm using in the finished version. Now that we know how this works, let's go over to pre-haircut me and go over how to install the code. I've already touched on the code a little bit, so let's discuss how to set it up. To start off with, we're going to download Thunny, which you can find right here. The link is also in the description. Download, install, run. Then we're going to go over to MicroPython download, and the website looks like this. Link in the description. We're gonna just scroll past all of these, and we're going to pick this one, and we're going to download this one, and just keep it in our downloads folder for now. Then we're gonna open up Thani, and then plug in our D1 Mini, and then we're going to click this tiny little button down here. We're going to click this little install firmware button. Then we're going to select our D1 Mini that we're using for this project. Then we're going to select our micropython.bin file right here, and then we're going to click flash. And we're just going to wait for it to complete. Oh, we're done, fantastic. Right, now we're going to jump over to GitHub, and you see all this code down here? We're going to do what every single senior Python developer does. We're going to copy, and we're going to move over to Thani, we're going to paste. And then we're going to go back over to GitHub. We're going to get the other file, which is the config file. We're going to, again, copy, and then we're going to make a new file. We're going to paste it, and we're going to save it as a config.py, because that's what the other file expects it to be called. So if you call it something different, just don't. Now this file gets very complicated very quickly. Let's start off at the top. If you get confused, all of the comments are very detailed, I think. I wrote them, but like they make sense to me, and sometimes things don't make sense to other people when I write them. Anywho, first, Wi-Fi password. Very important. You need this for the code to be able to check the time. So put in your Wi-Fi name and your Wi-Fi password. We're done with that bit. Next up, time zones. I don't fully know how this one works. I just know I'm time zone 1. So just keep adding or subtracting numbers until you get the time that is correct. We're gonna move now. Now this bit's important. This is where you enter the times of when pills get dispensed. If you don't want the certain container to go off, just leave it blank. If you want to add a time, you need to add the time with no zeros. So if it's at 9 AM, no zero before 9. And if it's at like 9:05, then you put just 9, then those 2 dots, and then just 5, not 05, just 5. Because that's how the code works. It's all better described in comments, so just read through them, they make sense. And then moving down, we have our pins, which is the pins that the D1 Mini uses for the sensor and for the 4 servos. You can build it exactly like I did and just not touch this. Just remember when you're editing them to use GPIO pin numbers, not the D numbers, because different things. And just save that, and you're done. Now you can just plug in your D1 Mini. Obviously do some testing first, make sure it all works properly. But then, theoretically, you should have a working pill dispenser. I'm gonna hand you over to past future me. I don't know when I recorded the next bit. It might have been before this, it might have been after this. I feel like I need to explain myself because I feel like this project took a lot longer than it probably should have. And it's because I posted a thing on Reddit a really long time ago and it got a lot of attention. And in that attention, I got a lot of suggestions on how to improve it, how to make it better, what it would need in order for other people to use it. And it just got overwhelming. At one point I was talking to a guy about implementing machine vision to detect whether all the pills have been dispensed properly, and it just ended up being this overwhelming thing that I didn't really want to work on anymore because it wasn't really what I needed it to be. I only really need it to dispense 3 pills a day for me every day. And honestly, I've set it up and it's been doing that great for like the last week. I'm happy with where the project is. I don't want it to be way overcomplicated because then nobody will build it. And also, I don't want it to be overly complicated because then it gives the impression of it being better than it is. And it's very important to me that people understand that this is not something you use for like life and death medication because it will either not dispense or it will dispense too many. So I use this for daily like vitamins. Like that's what I use it for. That's what I recommend you using it for. I'm not gonna modify it anymore. I'm not giving it like an airtight chamber. I'm not making it like UV protection. I'm not doing any of that. All the files and everything is available down in the description below. If you want to modify it, feel free. Just don't forget to like remix the original so that people know that I made it. So yeah, sorry it took this long. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, do all the things YouTubers tell you to do, and I'll see you in the next episode.